like this we did. Not like this we did. Not like this we did. Oh, not like this we did. 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 Oh, not like this we did. 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 Oh, not like this we did.
Good afternoon and welcome to Curiosity Feeds the Cat. Happy New Year to you all, and I hope you had a very nice Christmas. This is my first video for quite a while due to all sort of issues, personal issues that I had to deal with. I haven't had time to make any videos. But my first video for the new year will be about slavery in the Bible. Now, when I say slavery in the Bible, what exactly do I mean? I mean, what does the Bible actually say about the institution of slavery? Hundreds of years ago, humans decided that owning other humans was not a good idea. And actually, if we are to go further back in history, we now know that the Roman Empire actually allowed slaves to buy their freedom. So manumission was a thing in the ancient Roman Empire, and I suppose about 2,000 years later, humans decided that owning other human beings is a bad idea. Now, where am I going with this? Often you would hear the argument that the kind of slavery that we find in the Christian Bible is completely different to chattel slavery, or actually owning human beings permanently. What do we find when we actually look in the Bible itself? I will let you decide for yourself. In Leviticus 25, verses 39 to 46, this is actually what the Bible says. And if one of your brethren who dwells by you becomes poor and sells himself to you, you shall not compel him to serve as a slave. As a hired servant and a sojourner he shall be with you, and shall serve you until the year of Jubilee. And then he shall depart from you, he and his children with him, and shall return to his own family. He shall return to the possession of his fathers, for they are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as slaves. You shall not rule over him with rigor, but you shall fear your God. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. And as for your male and female slaves whom you may have, from the nations that are around you, from them you may buy male and female slaves. Moreover, you may buy the children of the strangers who dwell amongst you, and their families who are with you, which they beget in your land. And they shall become your property, and you may take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them as a possession. They shall be your permanent slaves. But regarding your brethren, the children of Israel, you shall not rule over one another with rigor. Now, what's wrong with this? Do I actually think that this was a mandate dictated by the creator of the universe? No. It is my contention that the ancient Israelites who wrote these passages in the Bible, they knew that slavery was bad, which is why you see the disparity between how you're supposed to treat Hebrew slaves and non-Hebrew slaves. They knew slavery was bad, hence the disparity between how you treat fellow Israelites and how you treat non-Israelites. It seems to me that the idea that the creator of the universe would make a distinction between, if you are to take the story as literally true, the descendants of Adam and Eve and other descendants of Adam and Eve. Because you can easily conclude that all human beings are descended from Adam and Eve, therefore God should treat them equally. But this is not what we find, is it? Now, My question is, this is not a God for all human beings. Now, you'll find some people, they'll argue and they'll say things like, oh, it was different back in the day. But, well, it's not. It says here clearly you can treat Hebrew slaves in a certain way. They are to be released after 6-7 years. You keep them until the year of the Jubilee, and then they can leave. However, permanent slaves you can keep forever. You can inherit. You can enslave their children. You can then bequeath these slaves to your children, and they are slaves permanently. Now, there are other passages in the Bible that talk about slavery, but for me, this is actually the most pertinent one because it shows clearly that the writers of the Bible, they knew slavery was bad, they knew slavery was wrong. Hence, the disparity between how you treat the people that they consider to be their kin and everybody else. What am I trying to say with all this? My contention is this is not actually a book that was written or dictated by any god. This was a book written by human beings like you and I who displayed the bigotry, the xenophobia that was, quite prevalent at the time. I mean, let's face it, humans are still we're still very bigoted now. And we're still prejudiced now, and we still treat fellow human beings, if we think that they don't belong in the same group as us, somewhat differently. The Bible is no different. The Bible is a product of its time. What it has to say about slavery displays this quite clearly. What I find really fascinating is when black people defend this stuff, because what you have to understand is that if you happen to be around at the time when this was written, you would be the slaves. Because regardless of what the Nigerians, I like to call them Nigerians, these are my fellow Nigerians who claim that they are a lost tribe of Israel, or they're descended from Jews and whatever other, twaddle that people like to come up with, you would be the slaves if this book still held sway today. The God that you believe in actually sees nothing wrong with you being enslaved, or should I say the people that wrote the book see nothing wrong with you being enslaved. They see absolutely nothing wrong with your children being enslaved. They see absolutely nothing wrong with you being permanent slaves and being passed on like possessions, like chattel. The passage is self-explanatory. I think all the mental contortions that you see, and I've seen many people argue about this, is there in black and white. If anybody wants to go and read it, I'm going to post a screenshot up on the screen so you can see it for yourself. As far as I'm concerned, there are many passages in this book that shows clearly that this was not the inerrant dictates of a benevolent entity of any kind. These were the writings of an archaic tribe which reflected the thinking at the time. I wouldn't say they were any better or any worse than human beings anywhere else at that time. However, the lofty position that this literature has now gained throughout history never ceases to amaze me. It shouldn't be anything of that kind. Owning people is clearly a bad idea, and humans knew this. Why couldn't God? And on that note, I am going to leave you with this, and I will be back very shortly with more science. My channel is primarily to deal with science, but occasionally I will meander into things like religion and superstition and myths and so on. I hope you have enjoyed this, or I hope that this has actually, revealed a little bit to you. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon.